Well, it's the comeback of the buyback. Meta platforms and Chevron heralding what markets expect to be a big year in share repurchasing. Here with more is Yahoo Finance's Ines Ferre. Hey, Ines.
Hi, Rochelle. And year-to-date, buybacks announcements have topped $173 billion. That's according to data that was compiled by Reuters, with a record January where buybacks more than tripled from a year ago in January. So this really strong start to buybacks this year in 2023, but fewer companies announcing them compared to last year at this period, because you have 78 companies that have announced buybacks so far compared to 125 companies at this time last year. But the big ones have been, of course, the energy firms, the headliner being Chevron with its $75 billion buyback program that it announced this year. Meta announcing a $40 billion program. BP announced a program. UPS, MGM Resorts just announced theirs. Now, the criticism against buybacks has been that it artificially drives up the price of a stock. So just to go back, when a company buys back its shares, what it's doing is it's lifting up the price of the outstanding shares. And up until now, buybacks haven't been taxed. Now, this year, you have a 1% tax that was implemented. This was passed in the Inflation Reduction Act last year. It's implemented this year. And President Biden wants to quadruple that tax to 4% tax on corporate buybacks. But Republicans are unlikely to see that go through. Now, companies like buybacks, though, because what it does is they are easier to suspend than dividends. It does lift up the share of prices where companies see the price of their shares that they feel are too low. Just to give you an example, last year, 2022, you had a record announcement of buybacks to the tune of $1.22 trillion. That's when the S&P 500 went into a bear market. Rochelle.
And we know, Ines, President Biden, of course, had some sharp words for oil companies engaged in buybacks. Let's take a listen.
If they had, in fact, invested in the production to keep gas prices down, instead, they used the record profits to buy back their own stock, rewarding their CEOs and shareholders. Corporations ought to do the right thing. That's why I propose we quadruple the tax on corporate stock buybacks and encourage long-term investments.
So we'll see some strong words there from the president on this and how he feels about buybacks, but we'll be keeping an eye on that as well. Anything that you take away from that in terms of, as you mentioned, they're not likely to see much movement in the opposite direction from the Republican Party?
No, I mean, if that tax were to go through, then you could see companies going more towards dividends. But really, buybacks are preferred because dividends are a little bit harder to reduce, to suspend. And right now, it looks like Republicans would not let something like that go through. But this is what the Biden administration has criticized before. I mean, they put out a statement after Chevron announced its big buyback program, basically saying, you guys, what you should be doing with that money is you should be reinvesting it in producing more oil in order to bring down the price of oil. That's been the big criticism against buybacks. But for companies, this is a place for them to put their cash, and it is a way to, in a way, return cash to shareholders, Rochelle.
Well, free enterprise, right? Well, what can you do? Ines Ferre, thank you so much for getting us up to speed on that.